It's going to be good. Controversy right from the offset. So we have Sandra from Vidyard, who runs the BDR team there. And I'll give you guys a very quick backstory. So when I was doing a little prep chat with Sandra, I was saying about the webinar I did with Tyler and Raver and some of the things they said. We were discussing what we might talk about here and what Vidyard's cadences are like, what she instills into the team, how they run their cadences. And she said something that just completely went against something I'd heard Tyler say. So I'm already calling him out right now. Tyler, maybe you're wrong. I'm sorry. But Sandra, how did I do? Did I set you up badly there? Did I set you up well? Are you feeling ready to bring it?
You're setting me up for a battle with Tyler. I don't know if I was prepared for that. But yes, you did mention I was the BDR leader. I actually lead the SDR team, which is a fantastic team. And we're doing a lot of really cool things with our cadences and using video. And I mean, not to say that what someone else has said is incorrect, but, like you said, things are always ever changing. So I might challenge one of those things.
Nicely handled. That was a good objection handling little example there. So, okay, well, let's get into it then. So the thing that Tyler said, and we can talk about as many other tactics as you want to bring up, but just to start with that. So I remember Tyler was saying, we don't at this current point, this was a year ago, use video as a first touch in a cadence. And you believe it can be used pretty well and very effectively as a first touch. So to give the background, his point of view at that point was they don't know you yet, the prospect. So if you send a video, they're not really as inclined as if they'd already seen and heard of you a couple of times. It's kind of the like branding type of thing. If they know my name by now, they know what I'm about. And then there's a video, they may have more inclination to click it. But in summary, that was what he has. So where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I think, there's definitely an opportunity to not have video in the first step. When we're thinking about the SDR team, for instance, which is the team that I'm leading right now, people are coming inbound. So at times you might have had a conversation with them through either intercom or they've already reached out. So you want to put a face to the name as soon as possible for that person. It's really a psychological piece of, I talked to this person online, now they're sending me a video. Okay, I'm putting a face to the name. It makes them feel comfortable. I also think that making that first step as a phone call is really important as well. There's a time and place for that. But putting a face to the name is really important. A lot of people, we're so used to watching videos all the time. This is what we live on right now, even when we're not at work. It's the TikToks, the Instagrams. We're just so attracted to that type of outreach. So why not put that as your first step in a cadence? And it doesn't have to necessarily be a pitchy video. It can be a 20-second, hey, it's me, Sandra. We connected over intercom and putting a name to the face. Let's chat, right? So something as simple as that. So not to say we're kiboshing it completely, but there's other ways that we can definitely be using video as the first step.
So I still believe in what Tyler said. The point is still valid, but what I really like about your angle on that is many times when you're on the receiving end of a cadence, it can feel as though, not that every single tool is like this, or maybe even the execution is meant to feel like this, but it does come across occasionally that this is just built once and it's going to go, as intended. It's going to go as sent, go as built, 4 days, 3 days break, whatever it is in between, different emails at different stages, almost regardless. But the video almost at the very beginning does say, I'm not doing that point blank because you did it. And then even from that, not that I would say you should do this, but you still could do that exact same cadence, but you've preempted it with a video. And there's no particular use, or you don't have to do a big value prop and pitch and demo or anything like that in the video. You are just preempting the whole thing with, I'm actually a person. Like, don't worry, not a robot. Don't worry about it. You don't have to unsubscribe or block me or anything. I'm just a person trying to talk to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And if we look at some of the stats, we're seeing that 22% of people are seeing a greater open rate and a 4% larger click rate over their videos. And this is actually done by J Barrel Sales Group, a research done by them. So we're seeing that video is attractive to people. They want to click on it. So why not put that as your first step when you have the opportunity to put a face to the name? Whether it's a pitch or it's just a quick intro to show your face so that someone feels comfortable that they're speaking to a person, not a robot, we can see value in that.
Okay, so that's the first touch. I'm going to assume at Vidyard, obviously a video tool, you probably have a few more uses of video inside of your cadence. But are there any other little intricate tactics that you've got that your SDR team are trying out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the SDR team and even our entire sales org, one of the things that we see a lot of success with is when you're actually on the person's LinkedIn page. People have LinkedIn pages for a reason. Let's use them. People say it might be creepy or whatever it might be, but if they're public, let's use it to our advantage when we're reaching out. So a lot of times what we do, and even in my previous role as a video coach, I worked and showed people how to get people wanting to click on something. So if you're actually on their LinkedIn page and you put your face bubble up right beside theirs, it just blows their mind. They're like, how did you do that? And it's as simple as the Vidyard app and moving your face bubble right next to theirs, and it almost looks like you've superimposed it there. The reason why we see that works is because it's familiar to people. There's familiarity there. They see their face, they see some stranger with their face bubble right beside theirs on LinkedIn and go, all right, what is this about? I want to know more. So that's one of the really cool ways that we're seeing it. What are your, have you heard anything about that? What are your thoughts on that?
I like it. I think there is a certain novelty to it. So possibly if you went to a very, very senior person at a massive company, the novelty maybe doesn't quite have the same effect. But I personally have never been on the receiving end of that. So you bet. Yeah, I'm 100% going to watch it and think, what's this about? So definitely there's probably a very, very small number of people that have actually received that email. But obviously we think that I've known of that tactic for a little while and you guys have kind of pioneered it, but I don't think it's really seen even the surface at all across the entire industry. So I do that. Another one I've heard of is the website homepage. I'm a bit less of a fan of that. I'm curious what you think of that, because it's a bit less. Our website is brand new at the moment. I had next to nothing to do with it. Although it is about my company and my job and that sort of thing, it's not really about me. That's company personalization, which is secondary to personal personalization, I think. So how does that work for you?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I feel like there's a time and place for that. If you're talking to a marketer, that's a great place to start, right? They want to see the website. They've put the work in there. They're focused on that. If it's more on the sales side of things, you want to keep it more personal to the person directly. You have options to, I know people have apps on their phone where they actually hold up their phone and put the person's name and personalize it, whiteboards. We have someone, one of our customers, who they did a hot wings challenge as their prospecting video and won the deal that they were looking for with it. So there's a lot of really interesting ways that you can definitely be using video through your cadences right now.
Okay, so we talked about a first touch, and then I'm assuming you can almost use a video as a mixing up of the medium throughout the entire thing. But what does your team's cadence look like? How many videos is in it if the prospect went all the way through to the very end? What total are we looking at?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we want to ensure that we're using everything, all of our tools in conjunction to prospect. So that's phone, email, LinkedIn, video. So you won't necessarily see the entire cadence as video or phone calls or email. It's a really good balance of them all. Typically, you'll see about 3 videos in an entire, say, 12-step cadence. Again, you don't want to overwhelm people with a lot of video. You want to throw it in there as a disruptor to their inbox. When you use things like GIFs, when you create your video, you've got GIFs in there and they're moving in their inbox and they can see that. That's appealing to them. So they're going to click on that over something else. I personally can say I get prospected quite often through text-based emails, and I've never seen anyone prospect with video yet. I'm not the only one within our own organization who said that, which is wild if you think about it. If you're prospecting Vidyard, you probably want to be using the tool, but not everyone's using it as often as they probably want to, or even their leaders probably want them to. So it's a good variation of steps for sure.
So if you have 3 videos across 12 steps of the cadence, if I had you right there, are you using that purely on email, or are you using that inside of a LinkedIn message if you did get connected, or is it either both?
That's a good question. Yeah. So typically you'll see it in the email. And if we're not getting responses through email, then there's always the option, because we have an integration with LinkedIn, to actually send the videos right through a DM in LinkedIn. Now, when you send those, you can do things such as, hey, I sent you a video. I know you haven't had an opportunity to watch it because I have the analytics. So I thought I'd shoot you a message over here on LinkedIn since we're connected. And then you reattach that exact same video. So we see success in that, because a lot of times people, again, they're just so bombarded with their inboxes. When they get something in their LinkedIn, it might just be convenience for them, right? They're sitting in the evening after they've had dinner and they're kind of just perusing their inbox. I've seen a lot more response rates through that in that process as well. So
I wonder how contextual it is, because you're selling video, that obviously you'd be doing more video slightly than normal. So let's say for my company, we don't sell video, although it's part of our cadence. Would you say possibly a little bit less than what you are using is best? Or have you gone very much, this is just what we think should work? Because obviously you want to show off, you're kind of showing off the product in the fact that you're reaching out with the video anyway, never mind what the video says. So are you slightly over the mark there a little bit, or do you feel like that's par?
I wouldn't say so. I think that's par. I think, again, people want to see video. It's more appealing to the eye. In terms of internally, absolutely, we drink our own Kool-Aid. We use it internally all the time, asynchronous meetings and things like that. But when it comes to prospecting, I would say it's pretty consistent across the board. Even in my video coaching role, we really talk about ways and places to place those videos. And people really like that. It didn't feel overwhelming to them. We want to think about the length of the video. These aren't supposed to be like production style. They're supposed to feel like it's something that's sustainable, that you can continue to do in your prospecting. And sometimes you might even, it's not always a personalized video. You might just create something that's a one-to-many video. We have a section that's like the breakup video per se, right? It's that last step. And that has really great conversion on it, but it's just you kind of summing up what you've sent. I know this is probably not the great time. And you can make it your own, but it's that last step, that last, hey, it's me again. And it seems to work. In terms of length of video, you want to keep it about 30 to 60 seconds in length. About 58% of viewers watch videos related to business all the way through if it's under 60 seconds. So if you can keep it at that, you're going to see a lot more success.
I love it. So this has been pretty much a masterclass in how to do video inside of your cadences. Have you got anything else you want to drop on us before we let you jump?
Yeah, I actually reached out to the team this week and asked them what some of their tips are, because they're doing it day in and day out. So I think sharing some of those would be great. We had someone say that being friendly, personalized, and professional, show them that you've done your research. Someone else has said aligning a message of your value prop with your job and your role in your job description, and being personable with the prospect. Have a conversation with them instead of always sticking to a script. And you can do that through asynchronous, right? You can just, hey, it's me. I wanted to just share this with you. The way you would explain what your role is if you bumped into someone at the supermarket, or a friend or a family member has no idea what your organization does, that's how we want to connect with our prospects. Don't feel intimidated because they've got this big title. You know what? Not everyone knows every tool, and kind of break it down and make it simple for them to understand.
I love it. So I'm going to try and send you a video using Vidyard, obviously, later on. And you can hit me for 6 about this. If it sucks, you can say that. If it's good, just, be kind. But I'll give it a go, okay?
Absolutely. I love that idea.
Okay. Well, everybody, thanks for listening so well to Sandra. Let's hear it in the chat. Let's give her a bit of a round of applause, a text-based round of applause, maybe some emojis. Maybe we can drop in Sandra's LinkedIn profile so you can give her a follow, DM her, send her a video as well. Aside from the LinkedIn profile, Sandra, is there anywhere else you think people should connect with you? Are you a Twitter person, or are you mainly LinkedIn like me?
Yeah, I'm mainly LinkedIn, so feel free to follow, connect. I'd love to see some sample videos for sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate this very much. And it's time for our next guest.
Thank you for having me.
Right, up next, someone who I've spoken to many times about cadences, and he's yet to let me down. I'm hoping now isn't going to be the first time. No pressure, Michael Hanson. Welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I was about to say, way to put pressure on me here. I'm getting nervous now.
I know you can deal with it. So let's talk about some calling tips, cadence structure. What comes to mind when I say calling? When is that prevalent in your cadences? Is that the first step? What's the deal?
It's a difficult one actually, and I don't think it's that important. That's the first thing. I think people spend way too long on this. Like, should I call first? Should I email first? I think we do what we call like a triple threat on the first day, which is go on LinkedIn, see if they're posting content. If they are, comment something thoughtful, connect with them on LinkedIn, send an email and call. But you could do that in a different order. The reason I like to do it in that order is if you've gone on their LinkedIn profile and connected with them, you can actually pick out some nuggets which you could use in your call and your email. And again, if they've opened your email, if they're opening your email just as you called them, that's quite powerful. But then my colleague Lawrence, he prefers to pick up the phone first, but he's like an old school sales guy, like loves cold calling, so that's like what he's comfortable with. Maybe that's why. But yeah, I don't think you need to worry too much about the order. For me, it's just about the fact you're like doing all of these things together, and I feel like there's a lot of like hostility between people. Like I see a lot of people who like love cold calling and they're like email doesn't work, and then there's people that like don't cold call anymore. We're like in 2022, whereas for me, like the best SDRs we work with at Growth Genie, they're like doing everything together and they see that like everything's related to each other.
Okay, so you're like describing it as like an all-in-one effect of not just like a sporadic touch here and there, which is dismissible. You're like ground swelling everything at once, and it's all very noticeable, right? So then it's, all right, I've got an email, I've got a LinkedIn comment and a request, and the phone's ringing, and it's the same person. So you're trying to be noticed in that all in one way. How then do you go on for the rest of the cadence, presuming that's how you start? Is there a number of calls that you do over a certain number of touches?
Yeah, so we have this, our most popular bit of content is this like 30 touch cadence, and a lot of people think that's crazy, but when I break it down to them, they kind of understand it. So the first thing is we don't do steps like consecutive days because we think that's a bit like too spammy. So we leave like a day in between. Also, from an organization perspective, as a salesperson, if you've got steps every day, you can get like a backlog of leads. So we like to have like one day in between, because say you've got a list of 60 people, you could do 30 on one day, then 30 on the next day, and then start again. So typically you're looking at like day 1, day 3, day 5. And then generally what we do, like I said, we're putting all those touches together. The important thing is you're doing different things, right? So you may like share, like say I was selling VanillaSoft, and obviously you're talking about cadences here, right? So, and you're in a tool that does cadences. So I may then say, hey, I see you run an SDR team. You're probably building out cadences. Here are like 5 steps that are good for cadences, right? I may send that on LinkedIn. That's just the whole like rule of reciprocity, giving something away for free. And then I would call the person, and then that's more like to book a meeting, because generally what we see is like email and phone, and LinkedIn is actually quite good from like an awareness perspective. But the phone, providing you can get people to pick up, is where you can convert more meetings. Because actually what we see, and I see this all the time, we have clients that come to us because we're like training SDRs and AEs, and they're saying, oh, I got this like incredible like personalized email, like I want you to train the team how to do it. And then we look at it, it's a great email, and then we'll be like, oh, did you take the meeting? And they're like, no. And we're like, why? So the person didn't call me. Like I didn't have time to reply to the email. So it's like some of these SDRs are sitting there doing these brilliant email and LinkedIn messages. They're not getting replies, and they're thinking people aren't interested, but these people are just busy. And if they picked up the phone, the person is literally already sold. But it's difficult sometimes to like book a meeting like on LinkedIn or email. So if you just pick up the phone, often it's very easy to book that meeting.
So I definitely subscribe to your logic. Like when you actually speak to somebody, you've got a much better chance of converting them rather than them having to sit and type or do any like clicking through Calendly and all of that stuff. But would you do that with every single touch in your cadence? So day 1 is the 3 hits on different channels. Then let's say it's day 3 because you leave a day. So then are you going to send an email and a call on each time that you do that, or are you going to make it mix it up?
I think what we do, we then, so like day 4, day 5, day 4 is email and LinkedIn. Sorry, is phone and LinkedIn, and day 5 is email. One of the reasons we like to pair the phone and the LinkedIn steps is that I like to look at people's LinkedIn profile while we're calling them. That's something like you can visualize the person you're talking to. And then like an email step would come the day after. So there's not always that like triple threat I was calling. We always do that on the first day, but that may not happen on like the third or fourth day. So yeah, it kind of varies throughout the cadence, but generally through our cadences, and again, so like the 30 touches, it could be about 10 calls, I think like 7 emails, and then like 6 to 7 LinkedIn messages. The other thing with LinkedIn is that we actually only recommend using LinkedIn if someone accepts your connection requests. We see like pretty poor response rates from like paid emails because LinkedIn literally says this person is paid to message you. So we prefer to focus on those first connections.
Yeah, I wonder how good they actually are. I think they're like quite underused. It's rare that I get some. It's not, I'm not getting 100 cold emails a day. I get a fair few, but not really on LinkedIn. But I would say because you can get the credit back, so I think you get 50 a month, depending on what you pay. If someone says yes or no, you get it back, so you can use it again. But if someone doesn't respond, the credit counts as being used until they do. So you could probably try it, I would imagine, but I'm not sure how good that will be. But I want to ask you then, so your first call is probably because of the LinkedIn research and touch first. You may have, depending on the person, found like a recent thing that they did or something about their company, and you're probably going to mention that as your little first line thing to bring up. What if you don't really find a lot? What's the go-to default? Because obviously you're on the phone with them, you probably have some scripting, but what's the default?
Yeah, so there's normally a lot of reps say they can't find something, but they can. So the way I look at it is, right, first, if you can do it at a personal level, but you can find something from their LinkedIn, like say I'm talking to you, I'd be like, hey, Ollie, notice you're running this, 0 to 5 million podcast at VanillaSoft. So that's like something very personal to you. Maybe I can't find anything about you as Ollie. Your like LinkedIn profile is pretty poor. You don't use LinkedIn that much. Then I'm going to go on a company level. So the company level could either be the LinkedIn page, it could be the website, or you could just go onto Google. I would say 90% of the time at a company level, you can find something. There may be these very like old, kind of brick and mortar type industries where you're not finding something online. I said 10%, I would say it's even like 5%, depending on who you're selling to. So in that case, you probably just want to think about, okay, I can't find anything on the internet, but what's like the industry of this person and what's like the job title of this person. So I could say, hey, Ollie, like I noticed you're a growth marketing person in the sales tech space. So I was just wondering if you had a moment to ask you a couple of questions. That's like how I would start the call. So it's still relevant to you versus just like, hey, we're trying to sell VanillaSoft,
Yeah, and then you're down to the strength and the accuracy of your messaging. So you're trying to... That's where probably we all think that we've got it right. Otherwise, we wouldn't reach out because we know it'd be wrong and it wouldn't work. But even then, it's like, how do you know you got product market fit? It's not quantifiable. So until you hear like no 100 times in a row, you maybe don't have it right. But you got to do that to know. So yeah, I see your logic. So let's say you're starting the call with that, and that then you don't necessarily get through. You probably leave a voicemail. Is it a different call through different stages? Are you trying on different points of research? Like, for example, say you do find quite a lot. Some of our team, what I like to have them do is, so like the first cluster of touches, I'll call it, your kind of triple threat. We do that in clusters. It'll be firmographic stuff, and then hiring things, or a bunch of different topics which are accurate per market. Are you doing different things per call?
No, we actually, so on emails and LinkedIn, yes, you don't want to just repeat the same email. But when it comes to calls, it's actually really your goal of a call is literally just getting someone to pick up. So that's because the average connect rate, I think for a cold call is now about 5%. So when I say connect rate, that means 1, someone picks up the phone, and 2, it's not a gatekeeper. So you get through to the right person. So only 1 in 20 calls, cold calls, are going to result in a conversation with your buyer. So actually like the 10 steps in 10 call steps we've got in a cadence, that's just to get someone to pick up the phone, right? And then what we say in terms of research is do all the research up front. So before you even start your 30-step cadence, you've basically got a couple of pieces of nuggets. You don't have to go overboard. Some people are getting like 10 pieces of research. We just say get a couple of pieces of research. Like for us, it may be, hey, they're hiring SDRs and they're using VanillaSoft. That's great. Like that's enough for us. And then we put that in our CRM. And then when we pull up the lead, every time we're calling them, we're like, okay, these people hiring SDRs. And that can be our nugget at the start of the call. Hey, Ollie, we've never spoken before, but notice you're hiring SDRs. Can I ask you a couple of questions about that? Hey, Ollie, notice you're using like VanillaSoft, right? And that's it. That's all I need to say. And then also, but like through the emails, again, I don't need to do more research. It could be different themes on that. It can be different themes about like using VanillaSoft, using cadences, hiring SDRs, the ramp up period for SDRs. But it's like just that little bit of research at the start is fine, because that's the mistake I see SDRs use. Are like in every single message, I've got to like do new research. It's like, no, you don't. You got those nuggets. Just like do kind of a play on it.
So one thing I think is a problem with most cadences. So like you said, there'll be possibly 10 call touches over the whole cadence, and with the connect rate being so low, you do the math, even at that you have a 1 in 2 chance that they do pick up, give or take on the standard there. Say they do pick up, but say the second call that you do and it's a no for now, or your messaging's not landing for whatever reason it is, unless it's no, call me in 6 months, you probably would pause the cadence there and leave it. What's your difference between that call which didn't inspire them versus the 7th call which then might? So for me, that's why I do the different messaging angles, so that if it's not point 1, it could be point 3. Who knows? But so how do you make sure that your same call is going to get a different result?
Yes, something I would look at as well is if you have a conversation with someone and potentially they're not interested. If we're in B2B sales, right, that's just one person in the buying chain. So I would actually, if you learn something new from the call about the person you're speaking to, that's also a win, because you've got more information about the company, right? So we were talking about research on LinkedIn, research on Google, on a company page, etc. The best way to do research is actually on a cold call. And that's one of the things I always recommend to SDRs, like see these calls as like research calls. You're like trying to get to know the buyer. Same way, I know people don't like these analogies now of like sales and dating, but same way, like, you go on a date with someone and you're trying to get to know them before like anything happens. And it's the same on a sales call. So anyway, the reason I'm saying this, because if you're talking about, call 2 where the person's not interested versus call 8, you can actually use that information. When we last spoke, you mentioned you're using VanillaSoft, you mentioned you've got 5 SDRs, that their target is 10, but they're only getting like 5 meetings at the moment, but you were too busy to discuss it, right? So you're using that bit from before. Now, if we're looking at a B2B thing, I may have got that information from the director of sales. Now, if I want to call the chief revenue officer, I've got super personalized information about that company that I can use. So I think a lot of SDRs are in this mindset of like, if I don't book the meeting, it was a failure. But actually, no, it's a more successful call if you got loads of good information, have a good conversation with them, and then you can call them back later, versus you bully someone like old school into taking a meeting and they don't show up. So it's about like having good conversations or like learning off calls.
Okay, I got you. So I'm conscious of a little bit of time here, but before we go, I do really want to ask you, double dialing, yes or no? People absolutely hate you either way, no matter what you say here, but I'm asking you a difficult one there. So where are you on it?
Yeah, so I did a poll on this last year. I think it got very good traction. I think it was like one of my most engaged posts of 2021. And but I basically advocated double dialing, and I got apps like you were saying. I got so much hate for it, and like it was immoral and all this stuff. But the thing is, it works. So I mentioned my colleague Lawrence earlier. So he's a guy like in his 50s, very old. He's been doing like door-to-door sales. He's been in sales for a long time, lot more experience than I have. And a lot of things that I didn't think worked, like calling someone 10 times, right, or double dialing, I've seen him do and have a lot of success. So I started doing these things and they do work. And the thing about it is people say, oh, it's immoral because they think it's a really important call. But the thing is, even if it's just a one dial, people hate cold calls, right? So if anyone picks up a phone on a cold call and it's someone they don't know, they're instantly on the defensive and they're like, why the hell is this person talking to me? So regardless of if it's a first dial or a second dial, the important thing is that your messaging is good. And what I found, if you do a double dial and you use extremely relevant messaging, people don't even care that it's a double dial, right? They're like, oh, this person's done his research, he's got something really valuable for me, like I'm enjoying the conversation and they're actually grateful for it. So that's what's important. It's not about like double or single dial. It's just like, however you get someone on the phone, be as persistent as you want, but once they pick up, make sure your messaging is on point.
So you probably give it, how long would you give it? What counts technically as a double dial? Is it like literally a couple of seconds, minutes later, or would you leave it like morning, afternoon? and that still counts.
No, double dial for me is straight after. It's like wait 10 seconds and then just dial again.
I can imagine, yeah, like you were saying, the 5% where you can't find any information might be a bit harder. But if you do come up with, hey, am I on the phone to the $0 to $5 million podcast host? I'll be like, shit, yeah, he is. Then it might be, I'll carry on from that. But, yeah, it might be difficult if you don't quite have the messaging right down. But okay, I'm really conscious of time now. It's been good fun. So any last things you want to leave us with?
So just on cadences, obviously we're talking about, well, this is another thing that I see is a lot of people are hating on like the bump message. The bump message still gets like really high reply rate. So what we see, we always recommend basically you do a personalized email or LinkedIn message or voice note or video, even better. But often what we see with that gets viewed, right? And people are like, oh, this is really interesting. But for whatever reason, they don't reply. And then you do the bump, which is just like any feedback on the video. That's one we do, because I know any thoughts is kind of like quite exhausting now. So we do any feedback on the video, any feedback on the voice note, Ollie. And that sometimes gets like a 10% reply rate versus only like a 3% reply rate for the first message. So yeah, like use bumps. People would say they're like thoughtless, but the goal of the bump is not actually to get someone to look at the bump and be like, that's amazing. Of course, they're not going to think. It's just to get them to scroll down and be like, oh, yeah, that video, I forgot to reply to it. That's the only purpose of a bump, and they do work. So.
Yeah, I prefer to give feedback than to share my thoughts. For some reason, feedback feels like I'm helping somehow.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, well, that's it for now. We're going to have to do this again. I feel like we could just do one for a couple hours all by ourselves, but we've got to move along. So where can everybody find you? Where can they connect?
Yeah, sure. So Michael Hanson, Growth Genie on LinkedIn. If you search that, you'll find me. I try to post like every weekday. It's like 4 to 5 times a week. And then, you can go on our website to see more of what we do, growthgenie.co. I always say this is .co, not .com, because we couldn't get that domain. But yeah, website or connect with me personally on LinkedIn.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your pointers and advice here. Chat, let's hear it from Michael. Thanks for being such good listeners. And it's time for the next guest. So our third guest today, this is, it's not the first time I've been on the phone with Jason Bay talking about cadences and emails, but when you get good information, you have them back, don't you? So Jason, welcome back to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Always good to be back and collaborate with you, man. Glad
to have you on. So we've had video, we've had phone. What's next? Maybe a little bit of email content for our cadences. So talk to me about how you just see, how do you perceive email's role within a cadence? What's the deal? Is it the main centerpiece? Is it kind of like the bubbling things back up? How do you teach people to use email?
I mean, with email, I do think it can be the foundation of a sequence for sure, because really what I'm trying to get people to do is focus on a particular message. That's where I feel like a lot of people mess up, is there's a lot of random activity. I know that we're going to dig into this a little bit more, but I think if you can be really focused around 2 or 3 compelling talking points, build some emails around that, and use the phone, depending on your industry, as a way to, obviously you want to get the meeting over the phone if you can, but use it as a way to point people back to the emails that you're sending. That's really where it's at. And I think that the big thing people don't think about is, what's it like to be on the receiving end of your cadence or your sequence? What's it like to receive this? And that's where a lot of people mess up. And we can dig into that a little bit more if you want, but putting yourself in the shoes of the person that's on the receiving end is the biggest thing that you can do.
I'm with you. I actually read my own emails back by sending it to myself. I don't read it within the pre-send. Yeah. I do it on the actual send, because you can sit on the phone that way and everything else. But okay, so the best salespeople come prepared. Am I right in saying you have some slides to share with us, right?
Yeah. So if we take a look, so what you're looking at here, I don't know was this a thing for you, Ollie? Did you have the Finding Waldo thing? Was that a thing for you as a kid?
Oh man, you're putting a date on me right here. No pressure.
So the reason why I use this is that, and if you just take a second and kind of look at this and see if you can find Waldo, like the experience that you have right now looking for Waldo, if you're looking at this slide, is very similar to the experience that prospects have in their inbox or going through their voicemails, where if I get an email from you, Ollie, on a Tuesday, and then you call me on a Thursday and then you email me again the next week, if I'm a prospect and I get dozens of emails per week or hundreds in some cases or dozens of calls, I can't tell that all of those things are connected and they come from you. So we email prospects. It's really hilarious sometimes when you see these emails where it's like, hey, making sure you got my email, and it won't be on the same email chain. It's like we're expecting the prospect to type in your name and look for all of the emails that they got from you. You know what I mean? And we send them on this rat race essentially to go look for the stuff that we send. And just most people are not going to do that. So if you take a look at the next slide here, that's Times Square. We don't want to think of our sequence as a billboard in Times Square. We don't want to think of it as this like thing that's just going to blend in with everything else that's out there. What we want to do, as you can see on this next slide, you can see it's my face, right, on a billboard in Times Square. We want to think of the sequence as a personalized ad campaign. I want you to think about how can I do something really personal for this person to stick out in their inbox and to show them that all of the emails they've gotten from me, the calls, the LinkedIn messages, that all of those things are connected. And we'll sort of talk tactically, how to do that, but we want to make sure those things are connected. So the big problem that I see is three things. So number one, I don't know if you see this in the work that you're doing, but running out of things to say, that's the number one complaint I hear from reps is, I'd be curious actually what your guys' data says, but a lot of the data is like, hey, 6 to 8 emails, 4 to 6 phone calls, 2 or 3 social touches, like getting up in that 12 to 15 plus touches over the course of a sequence is what it takes to break through. Are you guys seeing something similar? Is it more or less than that?
Round about the same. Our stats say 10.2 touches is what you need to get a response, but that could be a negative or a positive as we'd imagine. Like you said, pretty much the same. I like to cluster everything. So, but where you just said 3, I have 5 just because that's what works for our customers. I have 5 topics where we like to do. We cluster a group of touches on, say, day 1 about topic 1, and then topic 2 and topic 3. So, very much the same as what you were saying.
So that's a lot of content, right? 5 topics. That's a lot of content. So that's a big problem that I see. The second one is writing emails feeling a lot harder than they actually should. And I don't know if you guys probably get this from a lot of your customers, I imagine, where they're like, I got to write emails, and their reps take like 30, 60 minutes to write an email, or maybe they don't even send it out because it's so hard to send. And what you kind of are left with is all of this work that you have to put in to create a sequence and get very few responses. I mean, the average reply rate to a cold email, according to Clearbit, and again, you guys probably have data on this, it's less than 1%. So you do all of this work to put all of this content together to have less than a 1 in 100 chance of getting a hold of someone. So I think the opportunity, though, and we'll talk tactically again how you can structure your sequence, but there's 3 really big opportunities. I think one, a way that you can think of this is reusing and recycling. So this is kind of a big marketing lesson too. One thing I learned just with marketing my business and social media is that when you put a post up on LinkedIn, you know what? You could almost copy and paste that same exact post and put it up 6 months later, because not everyone in your LinkedIn feed sees what you post, and then you put all this effort into creating a good piece of content, and then you don't reuse it over and over and over again. It's a complete waste. You actually don't have to come up with as many new ideas as you think. If you come up with 2 or 3 really solid talking points and build talk tracks around those points, make your emails around those same points, use the same language for your emails and your LinkedIn touches, etc. I think number 2, there's an opportunity to keep it really simple and repeatable. In my experience, there's no secret sequencing formula. There's some really good principles that you can apply. And the biggest thing is that it's the easiest thing for you to do. I look at this like workout routines and diet plans and that sort of stuff. The best diet plan is the one that you're most likely to follow. That's also healthy, of course. And what I want you to do is pack your inbox. So how can we do this in the most optimal way possible, where we're thinking about the least amount of work that we could do to get the best results versus the most amount of things that we could do with our sequence? Any thoughts on that, Ollie?
Any thoughts? You know what? You totally lost me at the beginning with the where's Waldo, because in England we call it Wally. So I was thinking,
Yeah.
Waldo. But yeah, I know exactly the feeling when you go through the inbox and you very vaguely remember, like John Smith 4 days ago sent you a message about buying, maybe you've got this one at the moment. I've had hundreds of them about buying users lists from whatever tool. It could be any tool under the sun.
Yep.
HubSpot users, right? And you get an email about that and you delete it. And then 6 days later, it'll be, any thoughts on the email above? But it's not an email above. It's a separate email. And I totally get it. So your premise really is about how we're going to cluster things together, how we're going to make that reply rate go from sub 1 to at least higher than 1 in some smart ways that we can, right?
Exactly. So let's get to the framework. So I call this keep it simple sequencing, KISS for short. Again, the whole concept here is that we tend to really overcomplicate this. So we're going to fundamentally want to do a couple things. So before we dig into the sequence structure, you're going to follow this 3 weeks in a row. So there's a couple fundamental things that you want to do. Sequences need to be multi-touch. We've already elaborated on that. Sounds like 10.5 is sort of the magic number for you guys. I recommend somewhere between there and 15. The second thing that you want to do is make sure that it's multi-channel. 2 to 3 channels minimum. Where I see people being really kind of missing the mark here is they don't use the phone enough. So phone needs to be one of the channels. You could do phone and LinkedIn, or you can do phone and email. Like phone has got to be one of the channels, unless you're working in an industry where you've shown that the data doesn't work for the phone. I think the biggest misconception too is that the other thing I hear is that, well, the pickup rates are low. People still listen to voicemails too, though. So you can leave a voicemail and point people to emails, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then 3, we talked about duration, needs to be 3 weeks. So let's look at a sample week. So this would be day 1 of your sequence and then day 3. So let's pretend day 1, let's zoom in here a bit. Let's pretend this is a Tuesday. So what we're going to do is very simple, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in this order, but I'm going to do phone, email, and then LinkedIn or whatever other social tool that your prospects are hanging out on. So with your phone, what I'm going to do is leave a voicemail that points to the email. This is a really simple kind of thing. We talked earlier about connecting the channels. So I'm just going to say, hey, Ollie, I just sent you an email and the subject line is cold calling. I have some tips in there that some teams like A, B, and C are using to increase the amount of meetings their teams are booking over the phone. Thought you'd find it helpful. Again, the subject line is cold calling. This is Jason. I'll talk to you later. Really short, sweet email. I'm going to drop the subject line, which I recommend 1 to 3 word subject lines. I know we talked about this on the auto close thing that we did together too. Short, sweet, that sort of thing. So phone, email, LinkedIn. This whole week is going to be around one topic. So if I'm reaching out to VPs of manufacturing, which I work with a company that sells an automated welding solution to VPs of manufacturing, one of the biggest things that's on their mind right now is how they deal with the labor shortage of welders. So the whole week's worth of messaging is going to focus on addressing the labor shortage around welders. So with LinkedIn, you could send a connect request. I don't recommend that as the first thing that you do because there's a pretty low percentage chance that they accept it. You could follow the prospect. You could like, comment, or tag. I think that's the big opportunity, is tagging them in content. So let's say that you don't create that much LinkedIn content and your prospects aren't really on LinkedIn creating content either. What you could do is look at, if I'm selling for VanillaSoft, I'm going to look at your guys' LinkedIn page because you guys share a lot of content. And if I'm reaching out to some sales leaders, let's say, I'm going to reshare VanillaSoft's post on this webinar, let's say on sequencing. I'm going to write a couple sentences commentary, and then I'm going to tag maybe 3 or 4 prospects in the comments and say, hey, Ollie, I sent this over to you via email. Thought I'd tag you here as well. Thought there might be some good stuff in here with the team that you're running at ABC Company. Boom. So now I'm hitting them with something valuable. So that's your day 1 of your sequence: phone, email, LinkedIn. Day 3, I'm just going to spread these out 2 days apart. I'm going to do something very similar without the social touch. I'm going to do phone, email. I can also do phone calls based on triggers. I'm sure you guys find something pretty good with this. If you call someone, if they've opened an email twice, they're just so much more likely to pick up the phone, especially when you can call them as you get that notification. That works pretty well. And then for emails, we could talk about this too. Just doing a simple any thoughts bump email we've seen work pretty well, where you just bump this first email here. Same subject line, same email chain. I'm going to bump that email. And if we zoom out here, I'm just going to follow this same pattern for 3 weeks. Each week is going to have a different topic, new email chain. All of my messaging is going to be around that new topic. So I'll go ahead and pause there. Anything that you want to dig into here?
Yeah, so the main thing that I immediately guessed that this was going to be day 1 and day possibly 3 or maybe 4. So the main question in 2 parts for me is, would you be doing day 1 and day 3 through each of the 3 weeks? So what I'm saying is, could it be day 2 and 4 or 3 and 5 if you wanted to, or whichever? So would you be regimented on that? And the main other things, sort of the bigger question in my mind, I really like the way that you have 3 in 1 and 2 in 1. It, like we were saying, it avoids the Where's Waldo type of thing. But do you think at all it could become a little bit predictable toward the end? And I'm playing devil's advocate there a little bit. I admire the consistency, and I think that's the whole point. But let's say I've got my 5 contacts in a big key account I want to get into, right? I'm going for decision maker number 1. So I do this, and they by the end of it, they get the idea that my phone goes, and then they get an email, and something might happen on social media potentially on one day of the week, and in a few days something similar-ish, and then next week it might, and next week it might. Then that nothing happens with that prospect. So I move on to the next one within that account at some stage, and something similar happens. That's the only 1% thing in my mind that looks. Maybe I'm being extremely cynical, Jason. What do you think?
So the first thing that you said was the days. So let's address that. So it could be a Tuesday, Thursday. It could be a Wednesday, Friday. It could be a Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Thursday, kind of thing. You're going to hit them 2 separate times throughout the week. So in terms of it feeling formulaic to the prospect, what I have found in experience is that the people you're reaching out to are getting so much outreach that they're not able to even keep track of that. If I'm getting outreach from you and several dozen other salespeople, I'm not like looking at, I wonder how, like, let me look back at the pattern of outreach I've gotten from Jason over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And to your point too, some predictability is actually pretty good. What breaks through to a prospect is not surprising them with the number of times that you reach out or getting really creative with that. It has more to do with the message and the message breaking through, in my experience. So making sure that that's really in line with their priorities, the problems that get in the way, and having a compelling call to action is really what's going to make it pop. But yeah, I have no problem being formulaic, and I don't ever have prospects comment, on that at all.
Maybe what I was going for there was, it's born out of like a similar reason why sometimes you get some call fear, or that's really not the word I was going for. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to follow up because we think we're going to get rejected. You get that sort of mindset. You're not looking upwards, the glass half empty, and I'm looking at that potentially as this is what I'm doing, not necessarily how it's going to land in their world. Because that's very different. This is me doing that over and over, but in their world, they won't even think about that whatsoever. So I'm glad you turned me around on that one.
Yeah. You're an easy sell, man.
I'm an easy sell. Everyone's going to flood my inbox with a LinkedIn like and an email and a call at this point. But okay, Jason, I'm conscious of time, but this has been awesome. Any last little nuggets of wisdom you want to drop on everybody today?
Yeah, I think that if there was an outbound equation, which I think a lot about, it's volume times quality. And a lot of what I think people underestimate is the quality side of the equation. And they try to overcome poor conversion rates by just sending more volume. And that's really easy to do with a sales engagement tool, right? So I really want to caution that like that quality piece, that's your soft skills of being able to deliver a call. That's the quality of the message. Is the prospect a good fit? Is the timing right? I really put a lot more weight on the quality end of the equation than the volume end of the equation. Elon Musk talks a lot about like the direction of force. And a lot of people ask him how he's been able to grow his company so quickly. And he's able to rally people around heading in the right and same direction and putting all of that force behind something that's headed in the right direction. So don't make the mistake of putting all of this force and activity behind something that is not that good. So this sequencing structure can't make up for poor messaging, in other words. So just keep that in mind.
There we have it. So we're right out of time, Jason. I wish we could carry on, but I got to watch the clock a little bit. Sadly, that's part of my role here. But where can everybody connect with you?
Blissfulprospecting.com is the best place to go. So there's tons of free content on there. I do work with reps and with companies on outbound. So if you're looking for some help implementing this framework, definitely reach out. And I'm posting content every day on LinkedIn as well. So just look up Jason Bay and Blissful Prospecting. That's where you can find me.
There you have it. Well, chat, let's hear it for Jason. Let us know what you thought of his methodology, his Where's Waldo analogy, and everything that he was going through there. And also let us know what you thought of the rest of the show. Sadly, like I said, that is it. We've got to jump, but I hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you on the next one. See you later.